All right, today we're diving into one of the most incredible prophecies in all of ancient history. It's a story about unimaginable power, deadly pride, and a military takedown that honestly should have been completely impossible: the destruction of the legendary city of Tyre.
But let me just start by asking you this. How do you even begin to conquer an island fortress? Seriously, think about it. It's a total military nightmare, right? Your army can't just march up to the front door. You've got the sea, you've got a powerful navy, you've got massive walls. It seems like a pretty impossible job.
Well, in the ancient world, one city was the very definition of this problem: Tyre. For centuries, it was seen as absolutely impregnable, a shining symbol of wealth and power that no one could touch. This is the story of how it all came crashing down.
To really feel the shock of Tyre's fall, you first have to understand just how mighty this city was. We're not talking about just another city-state. Tyre was a legend in its own time.
So, what was Tyre exactly? Well, it was an ancient Phoenician metropolis, but it had this one killer advantage. The main part of the city was built on a solid rock island, about 600 yards off the coast of what is now Lebanon. This location basically made it the economic capital of the world, kind of like the New York City of its day.
So you see, all these factors came together to create the perfect defense. I mean, it was an island fortress, a natural wall against any land-based army. The people there, the Phoenicians, were master sailors with a navy that dominated the seas. They had a near monopoly on trade, which made them unbelievably rich. And to top it all off, they were known for being incredibly stubborn and fierce defenders.
And let me tell you, this wasn't just confidence, this was pure hubris. They saw themselves as literally perfect. The prophet Ezekiel captured the city's attitude perfectly when he quoted them saying, "O Tyre, you have said, I am perfect in beauty." And to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong.
But for all its strength, Tyre had a weakness, a fatal flaw, really. And that one flaw would lead directly to a prophecy that sealed its doom.
That fatal flaw was arrogance. You see, when its neighbor, the city of Jerusalem, was conquered and destroyed by the Babylonians, Tyre didn't mourn. It celebrated. It saw the fall of a rival as a huge business opportunity.
In fact, the book of Ezekiel records Tyre's exact reaction. And it's not just relief. It's a kind of predatory glee. They said, "Aha, the gate of the peoples is broken. It has swung open to me. I shall be replenished." In other words, their loss is our gain.
Now, that kind of gloating was seen as a pretty serious offense. So in response, the prophet Ezekiel delivered a prophecy that must have sounded absolutely insane at the time: that the mighty, unsinkable city of Tyre would be totally destroyed, scraped clean right down to the bedrock. Now, this prophecy didn't come true overnight. No, it was a slow, grinding process that played out over centuries. It all started with a siege that would break the city's spirit, even if it couldn't quite break its walls.
You can really think of the fall of Tyre as a two-act play. First, you have Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, who came and stripped the city of its independence. Then, more than 250 years later, Alexander the Great shows up to finish the job for good. Nebuchadnezzar, the very same king who had conquered Jerusalem, laid siege to Tyre for an incredible 13 years. 13! But even after all that time, he still couldn't take the island. The siege ended in a treaty. Tyre basically paid him to go away. But that treaty came at a massive cost.
So while the city itself was still standing, its power was completely shattered. It was forced to pay tribute to Babylon, its royal family was kicked out, its economy was drained, and, this is the big one, its precious independence was gone forever. Tyre became just a shadow of its former self.
And all this just sets the stage for the final spectacular act. Centuries go by, and a new force arrives on the scene. A young, brilliant conqueror with the audacity to do what nobody thought was possible: Alexander the Great.
Alexander's plan was just breathtakingly bold. Faced with 600 yards of open water, what does he do? He decides to build a road across the sea, a stone causeway so he could march his army right up to the island. Then he builds these massive, 160-foot-tall siege towers. When the Tyrians send out a fire ship and burn it all down, he doesn't quit. He just rebuilds, gets himself a new navy of over 200 ships to control the sea, and relentlessly pushes forward until finally he breaks through the walls.
The aftermath of that 7-month siege was absolutely horrific. The city that had defied empires for centuries finally fell,
and the price its people paid was staggering. 30,000 men, women, and children were sold into slavery.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. As a final brutal message to anyone else who might think of defying him, Alexander took 2,000 of Tyre's fighting men and had them crucified all along the beach. A truly terrifying end to a once great city.
So what are we supposed to take away from this incredible story? Well, the fall of Tyre is way more than just ancient history. The prophecy itself actually teaches us a powerful lesson in how we should read and interpret these ancient texts. Specifically, it shows us just how critical it is to understand the world of the original writers, their history, their politics, and, as we're about to see, their geography.
Let me give you a perfect example of why this matters so much. Ezekiel's text lists Tyre's trading partners, and one of them is a place called Meshech. Now, some modern theories try to connect that name to Moscow, but the actual historical evidence? It points somewhere completely different. Meshech was a well-known kingdom in ancient Turkey in a region called Anatolia.
And look, this isn't just a guess. It's basically the scholarly consensus, based on ancient records from the Assyrians, the Hittites, and others. The names listed in the prophecy, Meshech, Tubal, Togarma, they were all kingdoms in what we now call Turkey. And it just makes sense, right? They were all accessible by sea, which is exactly how you would trade with an island power like Tyre. Reading the text in its original context is everything.
And this all brings us back to just how final Tyre's fall really was. The language in the prophecy is just chilling. It doesn't just talk about a military defeat. It talks about a permanent end, like being sent to the underworld with no chance of return. I will make you go down, to dwell in the world below, so that you will not be inhabited.
The story of Tyre is a pretty stark reminder that no power is absolute and no empire lasts forever. So it leaves you with a question. If a city that was once considered literally unsinkable could be brought down by its own pride and the relentless march of history, what does that tell us about the centers of power we see in the world today?